Can you really put a price on love? Yes, love is a difficult thing to define. When I say it in this video, I mean romantic love, the kind that kids are scared of falling into and adults are scared of not falling into, the kind that probably led your parents to do the dance that makes little people. In particular, I will be focusing on the cost of romantic relationships and account for their varying degrees of possible success. I will also make an effort to account for the tax money saved or lost by being married, but that's much harder to get exact numbers on because it depends so heavily on the income of both spouses, not just one of them. Full disclaimer, I am aromantic and asexual, so of course my opinion will be somewhat biased, especially the conclusions of this video, which will be entirely my own opinion based on the numbers. I will also be calculating it for the US, since it's much easier for me to get numbers on that, but even within the US, this will vary heavily from state to state due to tax laws, housing costs, that kind of thing. But this will show the aggregate between the two people average across the entire country. I intend to use this video primarily to show not only how economically burdensome falling in love actually is, but also to show how our culture's idea of it is so detrimental to people, and how companies in particular profit from preserving that negative way it's depicted. I am calculating the average cost of these things, but there are ways to massively skip many of these costs if you're willing to break a few taboos, which I also intend to show here. This video will be divided into several sections. First, I will be explaining my process of research and the actual math. Second, I will have all my conclusions in a separate section, so if you only care about what I got and not how I got it, you can just skip right to that and get the numbers themselves. Third, I'll give my opinion on what these numbers mean for those who do and don't want to fall in love, and the reasons why I decided to even make this video in the first place. So now begins the boring part. Math. Whenever you see a number in parentheses, it just corresponds to a source in the description. So, where do we start? Well, how about where all the weirdness, relationship, begins? With dates. The amount people spend on dates monetarily varies heavily from generation to generation. Let's start with the averages across all surveyed. Men tend to spend more than women. In fact, they spent almost double. In 2019, men on average spent $860 a year on dating, while women only spent about $500 on average. Even with that much already invested in it, one-third of people in a survey by LendingTree said they often had to turn down dates because they lacked the money. What I found most distressing about these numbers was when the respondents were asked if they would be open with a date about being too broke to go out, only half of them said yes. Only half of them felt comfortable communicating with their date about a reason why they might not be able to pay for it, even though communication is well known as the cornerstone of any healthy relationship. Keep this kind of thing in mind. It is a common theme with this stuff. And here we also see what I was talking about earlier. Companies profit off of people feeling like dates have to be expensive and glamorous. Restaurants, movie theaters, although those might not be around much longer, and companies, even the ones that make those stupid little heart-shaped candies that look and taste like chalk, they all have a vested interest in you feeling like you are obligated to put down a far greater amount of money than you would be comfortable with for almost any other occasion into a date. Another industry that profits off of this kind of thing is dating apps. When I say dating app, I mean something like Tinder, an online platform designed to allow users to see each other and attempt to streamline the process of finding potential dates. Outside of the many, many problems minorities and women have on these apps, the apps themselves do not have an incentive to actually help you find a lifelong partner. Because if you think about it, if you use one of these apps and you meet the person you want to be with, a keeper, and you both live happily ever after, what do? You delete the app. They can no longer collect your data, advertise to you, and there is no chance of you buying their premium version. Due to this, they have an interest in their users being in and out of relationships, not in permanent ones. They do not want you to get the thing they claim to offer you. So, all that put together, a straight couple in aggregate spends an average of $1,360 a year on regular dates. So let's say you get through this part. What's next? Well, typically we expect marriage at this stage. Marriage typically occurs 2 to 5 years into a relationship, although this can vary wildly. So let's go with the 2 years since that's the most common thing, and that will give us a more conservative estimate. That's $2,720 down the drain from 2 years of dates. Fine. That's probably not that bad after this, right? Surely the rest of this will be more reasonable, right? Right? Nope, not even close. This is actually the least expensive stage of a relationship. Now we get to an institution that is really, really weird in retrospect. Legally binding yourself to the person you want to make babies with, also known as marriage. Special thanks to the Easily blog for making this part much easier for me by already having done a lot of the work. The first step is typically an engagement ring. Remember that $2,720? An engagement ring costs on average $3,456. Take a moment to think about that. A pretty rock attached to a gold circle costs $3,456. To the naked eye, it is indistinguishable from a plastic one. And they don't cost the companies that sell them nearly that much. Only recently did the biggest supplier of diamonds, De Beers, finally stop hoarding diamonds in vaults and only letting a few out per year to keep the price up. So that's the engagement ring. Now for the wedding. So how much does this one-day party cost? An average buffet style party of 200 people costs $5,000. A wedding is typically seen as a buffet style party, and it's usually about 200 people. So surely a wedding of the same size as a regular buffet style party shouldn't be that much more, right? Of course not, considering how I presented the rest of this video. Weddings cost on average $28,000. I am not joking. Almost 6 times the cost of a regular party of the same type and same size. So, for that much, surely it must be almost watertight, right? We all know it's not. It was really difficult to figure out the exact percentage of marriages that end in divorce, so I ended up going to the people who actually carry them out, lawyers. According to the Wickelson Finkbeiner family law attorneys, I'm probably butchering that name, the rate in America of divorce was about 50%. So, how much does divorce cost then? I won't even try to be witty anymore. $20,000. You could throw away a total of $2,720 in dating, $3,456 on the ring, $28,000 on the wedding, probably stay married and continue going on dates, adding at least another $1,360 or more, depending on how many years they stay married, and only have a 50-50 chance of success. And if you fail, it costs $20,000. Half the time it will go that way. And so half the time you end up with $55,536 down the drain with not really much to show for it. $27,768 per person. So that doesn't look great. But what about if the relationship succeeds? Well, at least this time there's more return on the investment. You can decide if it's worth it or not for yourself. So, how long do people tend to live together after getting married? Well, on average, people get married around 20 to 30 in the US. So, how long do people live? Well, once men and women are averaged, it comes out to about 77 years total per person. So, let's go with marriage at 30, so we have the lowest possible estimate. 47 years of marriage with the 1,360 per year in dates comes out to $63,920. 2,720 in dating, 3,456 on the ring, 28,000 on the wedding, and now $63,920 of married life. $98,096, almost $100K. Unlike with a marriage that ends in divorce, however, this time there is a return on that investment, or more of one. How you can decide for yourself if that's worth it, considering that the infatuation stage of a relationship stops suppressing the critical areas of your brain only after about 2 years. But what about the tax benefits? I hate taxes and I don't even pay them yet. I can't really give an average for this, unfortunately, because it varies so much on a case-by-case basis. The only consistently is that the closer each partner's yearly income is, the more likely they are to pay more taxes if they file jointly. I think this is a relic of when it was more common for one spouse to make all the money, because if they have different incomes, they're more likely to pay less taxes when they file jointly. And it also depends very heavily on how many crotch goblins they have, if any. I wish I could get an exact number here, but there's too much state-to-state variation and too many weird technicalities and exceptions. It's just too case by case. This is the part you have to do for yourself if you have a relationship. I wish I could get any other exact number, but the laws are just too broad. But let's assume we get past all that. Now we get to the hardest part of the research. Kids. First, like marriage, kids are way too case by case to get a firm number on. But you can be a bit more optimistic with the tax benefits of having them because they almost always do mean some tax deductions. But it's almost nothing compared to how much you end up paying because those little psychos are expensive. I'll split raising children into two phases, up to 17 years old and college. It's $233,610 to raise a child to the age of 17. Although, thankfully, this number also accounts for the cost of education, meaning it would be lower if a child goes to public school. Private schooling in the US, on average, is about $12,350 per year. So K to 12, you're looking at $160,550. Subtracting that from the total, this brings it down to $73,060 per child, although the majority of families who can afford for private education choose to opt for that because public education sucks. So, families in the US have an average of about two kids, putting this number at $146,120 to $467,220, depending on what education they get. But that's just the beginning. Now we get to the fun part, college. College has a fairly large range and isn't necessarily a requirement in the US, although it is important for most careers that actually pay anything substantial these days. Community college costs across the country on average $18,830, including room and board. It's only on average $3,800 in tuition, and all that's per year. Public college costs more also if you don't live in the state where it's located. So for public college, it's $27,330 if you live in the state, and $44,150 if you don't live in the state. Again, not including room and board. Without room and board, it's $10,740 for tuition, and out of state is $27,560. Next is private college. $55,800 per year with room and board on average, and without room and board, $38,070. And again, with room and board, you kind of need somewhere to stay, so usually you'll end up getting that. So let's add all of that up. $176,520 all the way to $913,620 for two kids, birth to college. Keep in mind the low number of this is absolutely not feasible most of the time and is not a good amount to spend. That's just the absolute minimum I could come up with. And now, time for what you came for in the first place, the final price of love. If a marriage fails in a year or longer without any kids, it costs an average of $55,536 or more. Marriages have a 50-50 rate to end in divorce. If a marriage fails in a year or longer and does have the average number of kids in the US being 2, that costs an average of anywhere between $232,056 to $969,156 plus dollars. If a marriage does succeed and the lovebirds live happily ever after, it costs them $98,096 on average. And finally, if a marriage succeeds and they have two kids, which is what a lot of people would aspire for when dating, to have kids and to have a happy marriage, it costs on average $274,616 to $1,011,716 plus dollars. Again, the lowest number on that is not a thing to aspire to. That is simply the lowest thing I could come up with. Just yikes, man. It's up to you if the investment and risk are worth it to you, but if I didn't already consider this a waste of my own time, I would now. This is insane. There are an infinite number of cheaper, lower risk uses of your time. In my case, I probably fill most of that time with video games. And for reference, gamers only spend $216 per year, including hardware such as gaming computers or consoles. There's no risk of those leaving you with a broken heart. At most, they'll give you a mild disappointment. You can put almost any hobby here and get something similar. If you still want to take the dive, that's your choice, but you should understand what you're getting into. And if you watched the whole video, you saw several things that allowed for spending far less money than on the things outlined in here, such as just having a party instead of a wedding, or skipping the engagement ring if your partner is okay with it, or just going on cheaper dates. The key here is the same as everything else in every kind of relationship: communication. Keep your partner in the loop and make sure you're both satisfied, and tell them when there's problems. The biggest thing I realized when researching all of this is that these prices are only so high because we, the consumers, allow them to be so high. We have imagined this idea in our culture that there's no truer expression of love than exorbitant amounts of money. And that, in my opinion, comes from the people who profit off of this. All the time, every time I leave my house, I see billboards and advertisements that claim, our product will surely make them love you, and other bullcrap like that. I would argue this is the most successful advertising campaign in all of human history. If we want this to change, we need to stop accepting it. Another problem with dating as a whole is something else I mentioned earlier. It has a failure rate of over 50% after marriage, and way higher overall. And I would argue that this is partially due to our idealized view of relationships. Our culture has this downright delusional view of how they work. It's portrayed as if the raw infatuation lasts forever, when really, in most cases, it only lasts about 2 years most of the time. And that's why so many relationships fail around the 2 year mark, because suddenly people's critical thinking turns back on and they realize this person's a weirdo. And we also have this depressing tendency to romanticize the most unhealthy kinds of relationships. Like how Twilight was viewed as this perfect relationship when it's a textbook case of abuse. Look, I get that it's hard to hear that companies profit off of your desire for romantic connection. You don't want to think of it that way. You want to think of it as this beautiful thing between two people that lasts for their entire lives, not as this overly commodified base instinct whose sole purpose is to incentivize reproduction. But the sad truth is, it's both. It's not black and white, it's somewhere in the middle, just like everything else in life. And if you're like me and don't feel the need for any of this, whether that be a decision of your own or simply being born without the desires, know this: you are not alone. As a society, it is becoming more and more normal to simply not get married or have kids. It used to be considered a failure on your part, but now we are finally accepting that your life is yours and yours alone. Among other things, this means we understand that if you do not want to have a family of your own, that's up to you. And anyone who tries to take that right away from you is in the wrong. But if you do want to take the risk, you are welcome to try. Just be aware what you're really getting into. And that is the price of love. Thanks for watching. I first conceptualized this video on Valentine's Day this year when I saw the sheer number of billboards and other ads advertising different gifts for partners, and I got to wondering how much people actually are willing to spend on that kind of thing. And it also came from this common response that I and other people like me have often gotten when we come out as aromantic or asexual. Many times we hear stuff like, "Oh, I'm so sorry you'll never have that. You're really missing out." And I kind of wondered my entire life what, if anything, I actually was missing. And, well, now I see I could be saving upwards of $1 million simply by not caring about it. And I also, thanks to this, have a bit more sympathy for people who keep trying to find the one but never do, because before I just never understood why it was so integral to some people's needing fulfillment until I realized it's partially cultural and partially just biological. And also, as I demonstrated in this video, the majority of people don't find the one. They don't get that. So, because of that, I'm personally glad that I'm aromantic and asexual, just because the odds of getting the good parts of love are extremely low. So, the way I see it, it's better to have nothing there than to only have the drawbacks. But others may disagree with me, or maybe they do feel the same way. But overall, I think this whole video was mainly just an exercise in trying to understand a thing that I have no instinctual understanding of, trying to put a label on it and explain it to myself in a way that I could make sense of, even though I couldn't relate to it. And I think this was decently valuable to do. I found it interesting, obviously. All my sources are in the description, as I said before, and if you want to do this research yourself, or if you think I got something wrong, please comment below. Tell me your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear more from other people about this kind of thing. And once again, thank you for watching. Took a while. Like I said, I started this on Valentine's Day, and here we are in July. School happened, I guess, but yeah. Thank you for watching.